Hi, Rob. Can you just unmute yourself for us to test your mic quality, please?
Yes. Hi there, Rob Calvert.
All right. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, sir.
All right. Cool. Okay. We're okay then. You can unmute your mic, or you can mute your mic.
Thanks.
Sorry. Thank you.
Hi, it's Rez. I'm on the line.
Thank you for checking in and confirming that.
Okay. Hi, do I just stay on the line then until you guys let me know? It's Reza.
Yes, the meeting hasn't started just yet, but I suspect we will in a moment. And the mayor will indicate what speakers can expect at that point.
Okay, thanks. I'll hold on. Thank you.
We'll get started in a moment here. Stand by.
Okay.
I'm just having a bit of an IT struggle this morning, but okay, I think I'm online here. Apologies for the delayed start. Welcome back to Executive Committee, the first of 2021. on today, January 18th. I will start with a roll call of members of council. Actually, I'll begin by recognizing that we're having today's Executive Committee meeting on Treaty 6 territory and recognize the diverse Indigenous peoples who have called this territory home for centuries or millennia, the Cree, the Dene, the Saulteaux, the Blackfoot, and the Nakota Sioux peoples, as well as this being one of the great homelands of the Métis Nation. Roll call, Councillor McKean, Vice Chair.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Good morning. Councillor Cartmel.
Good morning.
Live and on deck, Councillor Hamilton.
I'm here, and I was just letting the clerks know that I'm having a lot of difficulty logging into eScribe, and I have items to select, so that's, sorry for the delay there.
No worries. We'll, I'll make sure to come to you when we get to selection of items for debate then. And Councillor Walters is here in person.
Good morning.
Welcome. I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor McKean. Are there any questions or concerns or errors or omissions with the agenda? Not seeing any. Then let's try a vote, though I am definitely not in the right meeting here. Let me see if I can get there.
Yes, for me. I'm not quite there yet either.
I'm a yes.
Okay, Councillors Cartmel and Hamilton are a yes. I was able to vote electronically.
I'm a yes.
We have all the votes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, display the vote. Carried. The minutes from November 30th.
I'll move those.
Thank you, Councillor Walters. Any questions or concerns on the minutes? Not seeing any, then please vote.
I'm a yes.
Yes.
We have 5 votes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Display the vote. And that's carried. All right, we've got 2 protocol items this morning. First, as is our custom, we will welcome our City Hall School classes who are joining us virtually this morning. We have the grade 1 and 2 students who are watching from a couple of different schools. We've got the grade 1s from Belgravia School in Ward 8. We've got grade 1s from Major General Griesbaugh School in Ward 3. We've got the Linwood grade 1-2 class from Ward 5, and we've got Father Leo Green's grade 1-2 class from Ward 2. So Happy New Year to Miss Hutt and everyone at City Hall School, and let's welcome our students who are watching this morning. There we go. Hi kids, welcome. And our other protocol item this morning is a big one. As many of you know, last year we announced that we hired a new city manager who happens to officially start his new role today. And so I'd like to take a moment to thank the outgoing interim city manager, Adam Laughlin, for his extraordinary work over this past very challenging year. Adam, you've led the city through a global pandemic, which wasn't something any of us thought we'd be dealing with here in our lifetimes. And it's been quite a journey, but under your leadership, we weathered the storm and will continue to do so. So on behalf of members of council, you should be very proud of what you've accomplished, and we're all very grateful for your contributions over the last year. COVID-19 complicated and lengthened our recruitment process, but after an extensive national search, I'm pleased today to officially welcome Andre Corbould as our new city manager. After an extraordinary military career that spanned nearly 3 decades and with more than a dozen decorations and awards for his work, actually he wore his medals on Remembrance Day to one of our, to the in-person interview, and it was very, very impressive and almost slightly intimidating, I'll say. So it was an effective strategy, Andre. And so along with his emergency management experience and executive leadership experience with the government of Alberta, Andre brings a steady hand and strong leadership here to the city of Edmonton. During a tour in Afghanistan, Andre was responsible for security in the 4 southern provinces, and there he quickly gained a reputation for showing up in places very few general officers would normally go. In an attempt to better understand how the troops were doing, learn what their concerns were, and determine how they could be better supported. At one visit near the Pakistani border, the soldiers at the post were surprised to learn that not only was he staying overnight, but he was out going on patrol with them. It's clear that Andre is a leader who is interested in and invested in his team. He wants to know what's happening on the front lines, so to speak, how things can be improved, and what needs to be done to make those improvements. So Andre, I think you'll find as you take stock of who we are and what we do here at the City of Edmonton, you'll see that there are a lot of people who share those values, including up here on council, and who want to work hard to build the best possible city for Edmontonians. So I personally look forward to continuing to work together and to helping to advance the city's priorities at a provincial and national level and building a stronger and more resilient community together. So once again, Andre, welcome and congratulations.
Thank you.
I understand change of command occurred at 0800 this morning. So, and the transition process has been great, and my thanks to the city manager's office and the executive leadership team for facilitating what I understand has been a really, really good start to make sure we don't lose any momentum. So, so well done, everyone, and thanks. All right, so let's dive into the agenda. Did you want to say anything, Andre?
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I just want to say thank you very much. It's been just great to be here. I'm delighted to join the City of Edmonton. I started out with the Kathleen Andrews Transit Garage this morning at 6:30. I met some employees, so that was a great start. And I just want to say to the Major General Griesbach grade 1 and 2 kids that are listening in, I too went to grade 1 and 2 at Major General Griesbach School. So thank you.
Very cool, very cool. The boy mayor, they called him, because he was 29 when Griesbach was elected mayor. Before he, or maybe, yeah, after he was a major general. I can't remember the order in which those things happened. So anyway, amazing story. But thanks for sharing that, Andre. That's great. Okay, so let's select items for debate this morning. Well, I'll start with Councillor Hamilton, since she'd flagged she was having some issues clicking in. So
Yeah, it's it's a thing. So with the password reset. So could I grab 6.6? I think Councillor Esslinger wanted to speak to it or ask some questions about it. I'd also like 7.2, which is cross-referenced with 8.1.
Mr. Mayor, on a point of privilege, I don't think we can request to speak.
I haven't been able to.
okay, well I'll come through you each individually then. Councillor. So I'll come to Councillor Walters next, and then Councillor McKean, and then Councillor Cartmel I'll check to see as well. So we'll just run through everybody in a kind of roll call. But Councillor Hamilton, just to double check, you had 7.2 and 8.1, and I'm sorry I was distracted. What was the first item you selected?
6.6, the GBA plus one, and that's on behalf of Councillor Esslinger.
Great, thank you. Sorry I missed that. So 6.6, 7.2, and 8.1 from Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Walters.
So I'll get the ones with speakers, 6.2, 6.5, 6.9, and then 7.1 has speakers. And I also would like to grab 6.7.
So 6.2, 6.5, 6.7, 6.9, and 7.1 from Councillor Walters. Councillor McKean?
Mine are taken.
Okay. Councillor Carmel?
I have nothing.
Okay. I'm just going to scan this one more time. Okay. Someone want to move the balance?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Cartmell. Okay, on those items not selected for debate this morning, which is 6.1, 6.3, 6.4, 6.10, as well as all of the status reports, please vote.
I'm a yes.
And Mr. Mayor, apologies, I had item 6.8 as not selected on my list as well.
Oh, correct, yeah. So inclusive of that as well.
And we have 5 votes, Mr. Mayor.
Display the vote. Carried. Do you want to read that back just to make it official?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This morning, Executive Committee has passed the recommendations of the following reports without debate. Item 5.1, Leduc County Annexation Area Taxpayer Support Options with a revised due date of February 1st, 2021. Item 5.2, Exploration of Uses, Condition and Partner Funding for Hangar 11 located at Blatchford, Financial Viability, Reimagine Land, Property and Facility Asset with a revised due date of February 1st, 2021. Item 5.3, Downtown District Energy Initiative Development Update with a revised due date of February 1st, 2021. Item 5.4, Schedule A3 Parcel Options, Options for the property at 16307 87th Avenue with a revised due date of February 19th, 2021. Item 5.5, Schedule A4 Parcel Options, Access Options for the property at 10060 156th Street with a revised due date of March 1st, 2021. Item 5.6, Professional Consulting Services Usage with a revised due date of March 1st, 2021. Item 5.7, Code of Conduct for Board Members Work and Engagement Plan with a revised due date of March 22nd, 2021. Item 5.8, Potential Amendments to the Emergency Management Bylaw with a revised due date of March 22nd, 2021. And Item 6.1, Heritage Valley Land Acquisition and Land Sale. Item 6.3, Green and Walkable Cost Share Agreement, ICE District. Item 6.4, Taxes Recommended for Cancellation, Write-Off, Cancellation of Uncollectible Taxes and Penalties. Item 6.8, Status Update on Contaminated Site Management Program. And item 610, Bylaw 19515, Amendments to Bylaw 12408, Nonprofit Community Organizations Exemption.
Great, that's what I have too. And I just noticed, I should have checked in at the beginning at roll call, that we do have a couple of members of council joining us here as observers today. I see Councillor Esslinger and Councillor Henderson. Is there anyone else joining us that I'm missing?
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Sander here.
Oh, hi, Councillor Knack. You weren't on the screen there, but I see you now. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Katarina. Anyone else? Well, welcome to all of you. All right. We do have a number of requests to speak. So, Councillor Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move that on item 6.2, or that the Executive Committee hear from the following speakers and panels when appropriate on item 6.2, Kniski Gardens. Tricia Esterbrooks with Edmonton Public School Board and Jag Winders Sidhu from the Headway School. On 6.5, from Reza Mostashari and Robert Horvath. On 6.9, Aleem Somji and John Thiessen. On item 7.1, social procurement, we hear from Scott Crichton with IBEW, Rob Calver with the building trades, Eric Appman with End Poverty Edmonton, Susanna Cameron with End Poverty Edmonton, and David LePage with Buy Social Canada. And on 7.2 and 8.1, the West Edmonton Transmission Upgrade Project, we hear from Marilyn Kammer, David Arnold with the Linwood Community League, Dustin Sim with the Linwood Community League, Rick Ennis, Linda Lee, Deb Davidson, Gail Spencer, Samantha Balzer, and Megan Farnell.
Thank you. Please vote to hear from the listed speakers in panels on those items.
We're just missing Councillor Hamilton's vote.
Councillor Hamilton, are you there? We just need a verbal vote from you. I'm afraid you're muted. Still can't hear you.
Sorry, I got kicked out. I think sorry, I'm a yes, and
Okay.
it's password reset day, so I'm right here right now.
I've been there. I've been there. It's coming for all of us every 90 days. So, of course, on the first day back, right? So, yes, you're a yes for hearing from the speakers. Thank you for clawing your way back into the meeting. All right, so let's display the vote. And that's carried. Okay. The one-time specific that's already been noted as part of the approval of the agenda is that we'll deal with the item 7.2 and 8.1, the West Edmonton transmission item, at 1:30 because we anticipated speakers on that, and indeed we have several. So we'll go through the others in order. But first, let me check if there are any councillor inquiries today. Not hearing any. Let's start then with 6.2, Kniski Gardens update on sale of surplus school site. Is there a presentation?
Just a few opening remarks, Mr. Mayor.
Sure, go ahead.
So, good morning, Mayor Iverson and members of Executive Committee. Today, administration is bringing forward a report to provide an update on the sale of the Kniski Gardens South Surplus School site. Mr. Hodgson's actually going to do the opening remarks, but we have several members of his team and others to answer questions as required. Mr. Hodgson is online.
Thank you, Mary, and good morning, Mayor Iverson and members of Executive Committee. As a general history for the property, the city has owned the Kniski school site since the 1990s when it was acquired for future school development, and the vacant school building site was declared surplus by local school boards in 2009. Once surplus by the school boards, the property was included in the Building Housing Choices program under Policy C-583 and was slated to be developed into a mix of market affordable housing. In 2016, Council approved an exemption to Policy C-583 to allow the building site to be sold for other purposes. The Headway School Society has maintained an interest in purchasing the land since that time. An executive committee provided direction for administration in October 2019 to publicly offer the land for sale. Following that direction, administration publicly listed the Kniski Gardens South site for sale in March of 2020. 7 submissions were received through that process and were evaluated by administration. In addition to financial considerations, factors impacting the selection included the planning schedule of the proposed development, as well as construction commencement and completion dates. As outlined in the report, the Headway School Society of Alberta was selected as a successful proposal. With City Council's recent approval, the municipal reserve designation removal and amendment to the Burnwood Neighborhood Area Structure Plan are currently underway. The sale of surplus school sites follows procedures within the joint use agreement with school boards and Policy C-468A, which ensures net proceeds are returned and reinvested in the community through resolving debt, acquiring new school or parkland, or developing parks to bring further value to the neighborhood. If approved by Council, administration will now finalize the sale to Headway School Society of Alberta. There are diverse financial and community benefits to the sale. Any net proceeds will be reinvested in the community as described by Policy C-468A. It is suggested that the development on this site will greatly decrease the school commute for the children of community members and provide an additional educational option in close proximity. The 5.5 hectares of open green space adjacent to the site will remain in city ownership and accessible to the community. Thank you for your consideration, and we would be pleased to answer any questions you may have following registered speakers.
Thanks, Mr. Hodgson and Ms. Pearson, for those opening comments for perspective. So we do have 2 folks registered, Chair Estabrooks from Edmonton Public School Board and Mr. Sidhu from Headway School. So we'll hear first from Ms. Estabrooks and then from Mr. Sidhu. And I should maybe just read, pardon me, the orientation for today's hearings, just to familiarize everybody with the process before we get started. For each item, administration will, as you've just heard, and for each item that follows, provide opening remarks or presentation, and then we'll get to the stage we're at very shortly here, which is members of the public will be invited to speak either in person or virtually. Well, I think we're only doing virtual right now, using the Google Meet. So welcome and thank you for accommodating the technology. Each of you will have 5 minutes to make your comments. The clerk will run the official timer here in the room. However, those attending virtually may wish to use a timer at home too to keep track of time. When the speaker is finished, though, please stay on the line, as committee may wish to ask you questions at the end of the panel of speakers. After comments from the public, committee may also then ask questions of city administration. For those of you participating virtually, please refrain from using the chat function in Google Meet during the meeting, as it creates issues of decorum. It can provide unfair advantage, and it can even interfere with the live stream. So additionally, please remember to mute your microphone when you're not presenting or answering questions. If you're experiencing any difficulties, the Office of City Clerk has additional resources available to facilitate your participation in the meeting. Please reach out using the contact information provided in your registration at city.clerk@edmonton.ca. Thank you. Okay, Chair Estabrooks, welcome. The floor is yours for up to the next 5 minutes.
Great, thank you, and good morning, councillors, and Mayor Iveson, and of course, big welcome to the students from both Edmonton Public and Edmonton Catholic that are joining this morning. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you about the sale of a surplus school site to a private school, specifically, of course, the sale of the Kniski Garden site to Headway Private School. And I want to begin and preface my comments by saying that the Board of Trustees at EPSB believes strongly in public dollars for public education. Also know that EPSB appreciates Mr. Sidhu's and Headway Private School's efforts and hard work to acquire this land and fulfill their vision, and to really support the families and students that they serve. I also appreciate that City Council of the day back in 2016 opted to not move ahead with the sale of this land in the interest of seeking further feedback. And I think one thing we can all agree on is that this has been a long process. Time has passed, but the issue remains the same. At the heart of this issue is the joint use agreement, the agreement that City Council, Edmonton Catholic, Concierge Scolaire Centre Nord, and of course Edmonton Public have signed as partners. And it really is this agreement that guides much of our work, including what happens to land when school boards no longer need it. In the case of Kniski Gardens, as was referenced in the introduction, EPSB declared this land surplus in 2009, and both the Catholic and the Francophone boards declared no interest in it, and so it deferred to the City of Edmonton. School boards have a responsibility, in my mind, to release land when it is no longer needed. We want to be good partners. We want to be good neighbors and be part of helping build our city for future generations. We truly do see great alignment by the vision of the city plan that could help reduce as well as prevent future school closures. We believe surplus sites could contribute to revitalizing existing public schools by welcoming more families, as well as adding things like additional recreation amenities, green spaces, trees, or there's dozens of other purposes that these sites could help in building strong schools and therefore strong communities. When a school board, in this case, Edmonton Public, releases land through the JUA process, I believe that there's an understanding that this land will be used in the interest of all partners and not disadvantage another member of the agreement. Part of being good partners is also living up to the spirit of the JUA, which in the opinion of the colleagues that I serve with, is respecting the values of the partners that you commit to work with. To be clear, the sale of the land that at one point belonged to EPSB is now being recommended to an institution that is in opposition to the basic tenets of public education. Again, a core value of public education is that it is accessible to everyone. Private schools, by their very nature, are not. Private schools have the ability to accept and reject students based on religion, ability, sexual orientation, or simply at the discretion of the school's administrators. The board I represent certainly acknowledges the right for private schools to exist. What we're opposed to, and what school boards across this province are opposed to, is public dollars needing to go to public education. Unfortunately, in this province, private schools continue to be funded, in fact, at a rate, the highest rate in the country, at 70% of what public divisions receives. Public education, and I'm sure you could agree with me on this as well, contributes to making Edmonton a world-class city, and we must collectively champion threats to public schools. In this case, we need more program opportunities and diversity within our system. And so long as private schools siphon students, we are limited in our ability, and in this case, to offer expanded Punjabi education within EPSB. Former board chair Michael Jan stated our board's clear opposition in 2016 to this sale, and we remain opposed to it. We believe that a vote in favor is a vote against the spirit of the JUA. The idea that as signatory partners to that agreement, we support each other. Headway, it was not the only bidder on this, on Kniski Gardens, and with respect, I would encourage you to consider the 6 other applicants who perhaps will propose an idea that is better suited for land which was disposed of by one of your partners in the JUA and who gave up this land, believing it would be used in the interest of all citizens. Finally, regardless of the decision made today, Edmonton Public School Board and the trustees that I have the pleasure to serve with look forward to continued good relations with City Council and finding ways to work together on land and projects that can support all of our interests and the people and the students and the families that we all collectively serve. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here this morning. I'm sure there'll be some questions, so stand by. In the meantime, we'll hear from Jagwinder Sidhu from Headway School.
He has not checked in at this point. Our office has attempted to contact him by phone and will send an email to follow up as well.
Okay. All right, then we'll have to proceed to questions. Councillor McKean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chair Estabrook's appreciated your presentation. As I was coming into this decision today, I wondered whether or not it was the role of the city to make this sort of decision. So we would look at this in the realm of, excuse me, in the realm of land use, whether it's appropriate, land use impacts on the neighborhood, and that sort of thing. So I was wondering if it's really our role to decide the debate between public and private schools, if we really have a role to play. So I wanted to get your further thoughts on that.
Thanks, Councillor McKean. And, you know, as councillors and as citizens of Edmonton, you're certainly entitled to your opinion about the merits of where our tax dollars should be directed. As I've clearly stated, you know, as a strong advocate of public education, clearly the school board has a vested interest in that. That being said, you know, you represent all citizens in the city of Edmonton. So, you know, I think it's back to you, Councillor, with all due respect. It's up to you to determine that. I would submit that you, because the city being signatories to the joint use agreement, at the core of this, as I've stated, is, you know, we are partners in this agreement, and the value of public dollars for public education and the idea that that land that once belonged to one of your partners, upholding the values that we believe in so strongly, we believe is part of that agreement. And so I guess that's the decision you and you alone have to wrestle with in this. But I would also say, even if you are a supporter of private schools, I don't think that precludes you from voting against this. I mean, I think there's facts in this too, in that, you know, Alberta remains the province that funds private schools at the highest rate. And so as long as that continues, you know, it's incumbent on myself as a publicly elected official representing and advocating for public education that we speak against that.
So just for the record, I just want to say that I am a strong supporter of public education and the values inherent. My question is more around our legal role here, roles and responsibilities. We are hamstrung in other cases from, for example, I might not like a specific developer, but that is not the question before me at a public hearing. The question is one of land use and impacts on the neighborhood. So that was what so it is your submission that the joint use agreement binds us in some way. And I will be asking questions of administration whether there's the binding in that agreement goes beyond a sort of a partnership. Do you have anything more to say on whether or not the joint use agreement binds us legally in some way in this specific decision?
What I can say is more of the
Cutting out, I can't hear you, sorry.
joint. I would say that
I'm sorry, Tricia, can we, maybe if you turn off your video, maybe we'll be able to hear you better.
that this goes against the spirit of the JUA.
Yeah, that's what I kind of assumed that it was the spirit of rather than maybe the exact legal terminology. But I'm going to ask administration about that, and I want to thank you for taking the time to come out and represent today. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to hand the chair to Councillor Cartmel for just a moment before going to Councillor Walters. I just got to step out for a sec. I'll be right back.
I have the chair, Councillor Walters.
Thanks. So Chair Estabrooks, thanks for being here. Happy New Year to you. Maybe just to go a little further than Councillor McKean did, do you think that the JUA is as clear as it could be about site surplus, about how site surplus to the city can be used, and clear enough about the values that you alluded to in your presentation?
Thanks, Councillor Walters, and Happy New Year to you as well. Just give me a flag if for some reason my audio is cutting out.
We can hear you clearly now.
Oh, great. It's a good question, and thanks for asking it. You know, I'm no lawyer, but what I would say is that I think there's an opportunity for greater clarity in terms of defining the JUA and ways in which City Council, and not just Edmonton Public, but the two other boards in the city can work together. I think there is opportunity for greater clarity.
Okay, well, someone will follow up with admin. I seem to remember that there's an update occurring to that agreement. I'll clarify that with our administration when we get to the time, but I would tend to agree with you after many attempts of our, for the city to work together with the school boards on a number of these things. I think that is one specific opportunity for us to get some further clarity. So I'll follow up. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, the one thing in my mind that has made this perhaps a bit more complex is that this is not a new school, it's an existing school. And it's already in a surplus school, albeit with the other school board. And I just, so and I think their argument is that it's in an area that involves massive busing that they're trying to avoid. So I'm just wondering on your thoughts about that. It's not as if we're creating a new school that doesn't currently exist, and or putting them into its. They're already in the situation that you describe, and that they're in a surplus school in Forest Heights. So just your thinking on that and how this is different.
Thanks, Councillor Henderson. And, you know, certainly I've read in the media and have had conversations about the merits, which I believe is what you were just pointing out there, the merits of Headway taking over this site. I guess I would go back to a point that I shared in my presentation around the idea that this site has the very real potential of siphoning students away from the public system. And so Edmonton Public is world-renowned for the choice in which we offer within the public education system. And so when we have a private school, which again is receiving 70% of what a public school student would receive, the potential is there that they're siphoning students away from the public division, which we again believe is the best avenue in which to educate students, given public education's role in being accessible to everyone. And so, you know, I recognize that you have a difficult decision, and I guess I'm sort of bringing it to sort of a more of a philosophical level, if you will. And so I guess our concern again just goes back to the fact that this will impact Edmonton Public and our ability to offer, you know, what is important programming, important diverse programming within the public system, within the public setting, accessible to everyone.
And I understand and have great sympathy for that position. It's just in this circumstance, how is this different from a conversation that could have happened? And it's not the only circumstance that I'm aware of, even in my own ward, where we have private schools that are leasing school space, not from a separate school board. And is it, are they out? Do you consider them out of line in that circumstance for making that choice?
Well, again, I think it goes back to what organization or what party is going to use that land or use a building. And you're right, there are other examples of this, but I think it's incumbent on the public school board to stand up and speak out against these sales when they do happen. And I guess I would just ask, when we have a surplus site or a surplus building, and that's often the case in some of these situations, school buildings can be repurposed for other reasons or other purposes than a school. There's some great creative examples of small businesses, for example, or seniors organizations that can use such buildings for the greater purpose of serving all citizens rather than a select few. And so I would say, let's not be limited in how we view surplus buildings as strictly as school sites. I hope that answers your question, Councillor.
Great. Yeah, no, I just wanted to ask that question because it's one of the things that does make this one a bit more complicated. Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Essinger.
Thank you. And thank you very much, Chair Estabrook, for joining us today. Having been in your seat, I can appreciate your position. I guess one of the things you talked about in your comments was there's other uses you would prefer to see used on this land. Could you be more specific about that? What were you hoping to see on land that you've declared surplus?
Well, I think there's all sorts of different examples. I'll turn my video off just in case. I think there's all sorts of examples where, community as a whole could benefit from land. When we look at it, our school sites and our surplus school sites, those with buildings and those without, really are at critical junctures in our community. Again, it's just an example how schools are truly the hubs of our communities. So I'm a little reticent to give a specific example of how this site could be used, because wanting to be respectful of the community and certainly their input of how this site could be used, and not knowing the 6 other bidders and what their intent for that land would be. But again, I would put forward that there's greater opportunities for greater accessibility for all Edmontonians. I mentioned perhaps a park or a green space of some sort, a seniors facility. I mean, those are just some of the many examples, I think. And I think, you know, community would certainly have many more examples of projects that could fit in a space like this.
Thank you. I mean, I think these are complex things because we have limited land, and when there's opportunities, we're going to have to think very differently about how we use the land. And though some of our choices, whether it's through infill or adding space, might add children to communities, it doesn't always look like that. And I'm wondering, as we go forward, maybe we have to think about the joint use differently. You have the closed schools as well. Maybe we need to look at how to repurpose them with community. So maybe this is a good juncture for us to consider future discussion on how we get more community engagement in all those processes. Are you thinking that might be something we could do together in the future?
Thanks, Councillor Esslinger, and I certainly appreciate your perspective as a former board chair and knowing just how important it is to work with community and families on these topics. And I agree, it is a complex topic. Land is valuable within our city, and you know, I respect that City Council has to make decisions about the future of that land. I would also say that I agree, this is an opportunity to work together. You know, we have a number of surplus sites, and as I mentioned in my comments, holding on to this land, we want to be good neighbors. We want to help you fulfill that vision of the city plan, which we're there with you, and we want to continue to be good partners. You know, for example, I think about some of the great goals around affordable housing. You know, I think there's great opportunity when we can work together collectively as school boards and city councils towards achieving some of those objectives. So I think this, if there's a silver lining to this, certainly it's that perhaps this sparks bigger, not more important, but bigger conversations about ways that we can collectively work together. And you're right, I agree, as Councillor Walters mentioned as well, perhaps it's time to take a review of that joint use agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think perhaps that's where we need I have no vote in this committee, but maybe we do strike a committee where we can have those future conversations, because I think this has just brought it to a head, and I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll pick up there. Maybe, thank you, Chair Estabrooks. I can understand where the board's coming from, both on the sort of philosophical and public policy questions around the value of public education, which I resonate with, and also the question of really expectations that would run with the land. And I can understand why the board would be of the view that there are implied expectations about options on the disposition of the land. And so we've heard this described as the spirit of the agreement. So would you be able to clarify whether it is the board's implicit understanding that there is more or less an implied restrictive covenant on each site that is surplused, that it not be repurposed for competitive uses? That would be the board's desire. Is that fair?
Yes, that is correct, and that's certainly the view that former board chair and now trustee Jans expressed in 2016. And so our view again is that there are, as you eloquently put it, implied expectations. The idea that in a partnership you respect the other partner's perspectives and viewpoints on that, and not to say that you're not respecting it. We believe that we have been heard. And I guess, again, just to reiterate that we feel, again, that this goes against the spirit of the joint use agreement.
Well, and I think when you have a divergence of interpretation over the spirit of an agreement, that, to Councillor Esslinger's point, really cries out for reopening of discussions, and unfortunately, this decision before us is bringing that to a head. But I hear you being open to having a clear conversation about that, so we can get from implied and questions of spirit to a shared black letter understanding for clarity and the benefit of both parties. And it sounds like you're open to that.
Absolutely. My board is open to future conversations, and it's encouraging to hear some members of City Council indicating that as well. I mean, I think also Edmontonians deserve this clarity. Many Edmontonians are familiar with the joint use agreement. It affects their lives. And so I think clarity is kindness in this instance. And I look forward to perhaps continuing this conversation there.
Okay. We'll figure out the right mode to follow up on that. But I just want to loop back around to the question of public funding, public dollars at stake here. There are two related questions. There's the question of public lands, which come into the possession of the city on behalf of school boards unless or until you need them. And it's a form of value, but it's not money. And then there's the cost of developing a school, which is paid for by the public if it's a public school, and paid for by the private school if it's a private school, which I understand would be their cost in this case. And then there's the question of the funding of the operations of the school. And so when you're talking about public funds in context of the land transaction, where in your estimation is the public not being made whole? I could completely understand a perspective around an issue with public funding and fairness to the taxpayer if the land was being given for free or if the school was being given for free in terms of the capital dollars. But I want to give you another shot to try to explain to me where the public is not being made whole in a market transaction for the land.
Sure. Thanks, Mayor, and thanks for the opportunity to clarify. So private schools, as you mentioned, they have to fundraise or find ways to pay for their capital costs. Traditionally, that's how it's been done. And as I referenced in my presentation, it's the operations. So again, private schools would receive up to about 70% of what a public school receives. When it comes to land, that transaction of land, again, it goes back to that philosophical argument around land that once belonged to a public institution and was accessible to everyone. And the idea that that land needs to remain accessible to everyone. And so, again, going back to the core value of public education and the idea of it being publicly accessible to everyone, and some of the questioning that other councillors, in particular Councillor Esslinger, brought up around, so what are some of the other uses? And so I guess my board, again, would put forward that perhaps there are, with all due respect, alternative uses for this land that would serve the greater public.
Okay, I understand where you're coming from. Thank you for that. I'm out of time. Are there any other questions for Ms. Estabrooks? Okay, not seeing any. I see that Mr. Sidhu was able to join us. He was logged into a different feature, and so, but now he's been able to join us, so I think it's only fair that we hear from him before we move to questions of administration. So, Mr. Sidhu, welcome. You have up to 5 minutes, and then there may be some questions for you. Go ahead, sir.
Well, I've been hearing this thing, public usage and public this and public that. All these kids live within 2 kilometers, and they are the public for that area. And we are open to everybody. Actually, I went and visited the Burnwood League. The Burnwood League people visited us, and we have declared that anybody who's a non-Punjabi person going to our school, there will be no fees charged also. So we are trying to be sort of mixing in the community and stuff like that, if we were to able to secure that piece of land and build a school there. The Community League loves the idea of a new school, and we've been working on that. All the neighbors, I visited almost 80% of the houses around and talked to them and explained it, because I got a lot of experience doing that for Jeans Wozdeski, going house to house for about 20 some years. So I was trying to see, what's going on in there. I just don't understand the position of, monopolizing these things, because it's not 1763. We have moved ahead. The Canadiana or Canadian community is much more diverse, and the definitions have to be changed now, I guess. And the 1981 Constitution is helping us move along in that way. I honestly think that, it's good. 80% of all the kids from other communities go to public schools, and they're doing a wonderful job. But there are some people like me who think it's, sending your child to public school is like cultural genocide. They're losing. Third generation people lose 70% of their language in my culture, and that starts Canada. And 30% people remember Punjabi, third generation. Only 30% remember their language, or they know their language. And what's worst is Punjabi is the best. So 30% retention is number one, third generation. Everybody else, the Russians, everything goes down. So in multiculturalism, 1981, it's been enshrined. It's about time we started giving the communities infrastructure and remove all these monopolizing methods, trying to bully the minorities into corner, and monopolizing the public money, and overspending on things, overpaying on things, and having 40% results. We get 40% of the money, 100% kids go to university and college, while other people get 100% of the money and 40% children go to university and college. So I think Canadians want a better bang for the buck too, and it's not a private school, it's an independent school. It's a non-profit society. It belongs to the community. It's a Burnwood Community League kind of project. So I'm just going to take that many minutes. Thank you. And you may ask questions, please.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Sidhu? Councillor McKean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Sidhu. I just wanted to confirm that anybody in that local area could go to that school. That's what you said. Would they then be the language education as part of this? Would they then be required to be learning that language, or are classes offered in your language, or?
Yes, classes are often, that's a very good question. Classes are offered in my language. We have for example, we have 4 Pakistani kids who are Muslims. So they are learning our language, but for the, if there's any religious day we are celebrating or stuff, they are exempt from that. So we don't ask them to participate, in those kind of things. But the language we teach at very low level to those children whose mother tongue is not Punjabi, so they can learn about culture, so we can understand each other. And there are people like who go to our school whose language is not Punjabi, but we teach them at a very low level.
And I don't know how relevant this is, but are some of the classes taught in English then?
Everything is in English, sir, except Punjabi.
Perfect. And the other question I had, and excuse my ignorance, but does the public school system not offer Punjabi language education in one or more of its schools?
Very good question. You bring some old nightmares back. I was sent by Jeans Wozdeski to present myself to Edmonton Public in late 90s, so I could go beg for one room to start a school in Punjabi. and I was laughed at by the board and quote unquote, Punjabi? Who needs Punjabi in Alberta? So in 2001, we started Punjabi school, then there was another Punjabi school, and then when Jean was education minister, then these board people went and say, could you make this a heritage language? Because we want to teach Punjabi too. It wasn't for the love of Punjabi, but it was to compete with the Headway school. And the news is that I was one of the 4 people in Alberta who gladly accepted and wrote the curriculum for the public school in Punjabi. You can go back to the records, because I still didn't have that feeling that I'm competing, you know. And right now, they're trying to teach Punjabi, but they got 3 other schools like Cogito and stuff at Mayo Cuman. It's not happening the way it's supposed to be, but they have it like, oh, we are teaching Punjabi. But as a teacher, as a Punjabi person, it's a horrendous job. I'm sorry to say that. Children are not learning the way they're supposed to be learning. It's like me trying to teach Chinese. The principal does not know Punjabi. How she's going to supervise and how she's going to manage the Punjabi program in there. What I hear is not a very good program, and parents are not choosing it. There used to be a big demand. There were a lot of parents choosing it, but the numbers have dwindled like you would not believe.
So I think the classic fear from those of us who believe strongly in a well-funded, high-quality public school system accessible to all is that private schools or charter schools or independent schools will start to dilute the quality in public schools. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity to respond to that fear.
Actually, when we compete, we make public schools better. And if there's lack of competition, boy, will they go backwards. They, you know, all the examples I know, when there's no competition in anything, be it sport or be it academics, without competition, everybody sort of just starts beating their own drum and they don't listen to community or people. But when there's a choice, now, like I was laughed at, Punjabi, who needs Punjabi? But once Headway school opened, all of a sudden the Calgary School Board and Edmonton Public, they went to Jean. There are records for, please make Punjabi a heritage language so we can teach. Oh, good. Now they kind of woke up. So if we are going to do better with less money or half of the money, now they're going to have to show up also, and they have to start competing. Nothing is going to dilute them with $7.5 billion, and when $263 billion are spent on independent school. They are strong, and we want them to be strong, and we want to coexist with them. And even our children, if they want to choose to go to public school, good for them. But those who want to choose to go to our school, Punjabi school, or be it any Christian school or anything like that, the choice for the parents should be there. That is capitalism. That is free sort of freedom.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Sidhu? Not seeing any. Then thank you to both of our speakers. We'll now turn to questions of administration.
Yeah, one more thing that Alberta government.
Sorry, Mr. Sidhu. I'm sorry, Mr. Sidhu. I need to stop you there. Unless there's a question put to you, your time's up, I'm afraid.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks. Okay, questions of administration. Councillor McKean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I want to try to get at our role and responsibility here as the civic government, and whether or not what our legal responsibilities here are. First of all, as I was asking Chair Estabrook, I just wondered if it is administration's view, and it seemed, looking at the recommendation, it might be administration's view that the private versus public school debate is outside our discretion.
Councillor, we did look at the joint use agreement, and we did try and expand to use it as we could, but I will actually ask Mr. Hodgson to talk to that. But it is a principle that is a provincial mandate, in my opinion, and that's what we took the lens on when we did develop the recommendation.
And Councillor McKeon, just to build on that, and I'll pass it off a little bit as well. You know, I think that the question came up around the legal obligations under the joint use agreement versus the spirit of the joint use agreement. And I won't comment on the spirit side of things. I think that the joint use agreement is in place to ensure that that the appropriate use of lands as they become surplus from school board use is applied in a way that works for all parties. In terms of the legal side of things, Ms. Anderchuk or Ms. Thurston, I believe, can expand on what is currently existing within the JUA.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Hodgson. It's Ms. Andrzejczyk, and I will start, and then if we get into any deeper details in the JUA, then I'll ask Ms. Thurston to assist. And just, I think to be clear, the accreditation of private schools happens at a provincial level, if that helps. And hopefully this gives you a little bit of a framework. So when a school board determines that a site is surplus to its needs, the joint use agreement stipulates the other school boards possess the first right of refusal. And if the site is reserve land and neither school board has expressed an interest in it, then the claim on the land as a future school is removed and the site becomes a surplus building site within the city's inventory. These sites may be retained by the city for a civic use or disposed of. And it's our view the city is not legally obligated to consult with the school boards or the steering committee to obtain approval of these dispositions. I think if we then look at, are there any restrictions on the use of the sale proceeds? The Municipal Government Act stipulates that upon removal of the reserve designation, the city may sell, lease, or otherwise dispose of the former reserve land, and the proceeds from the sale, lease, or other disposition of the reserve land may be used for any of the following: a public park, a public recreation area, or school board purposes, or to separate areas of land that are used for different purposes. The Edmonton Charter under the MGA also includes a provision that proceeds from the sale, lease, or disposition of municipal reserve, school reserve, or municipal and school reserve land may be used for a purpose that provides a public benefit compatible with school board purposes as set out in the JUA and planning agreement. And then finally, our city policy C468A to govern the use of funds from the sale of surplus school sites states that residual funds received from any sale of a surplus school site will be credited to the funds in lieu reserve account for use by administration in consultation with the affected neighborhood and other neighborhoods within the larger plan area through the capital priority plan. And that is okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm quickly running out of time here. I thought Chair Estabrook made a really interesting, perhaps philosophical point near the end that the joint use agreement, the spirit of it was that any future use would be public, as this is public land. Do you have any comment on that, Ms. Andrzejczyk?
I am going to ask for Ms. Thurston's assistance on that.
Thank you, Bonnie. The JUA does not expressly reference any such obligation. So if there was an understanding of that, that certainly isn't in the agreement itself. I think that's more of discussions, or sorry, I shouldn't say that. More of a political reputational discussion, so much as a legal one.
I'm out of time. I might come around. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Other questions for administration? Maybe I'll pop in then. So I think that legal context and black letter understanding of what the GAUA does properly oblige us to is very, very helpful and as well covered in the reports, but useful for the public to hear as well. It certainly sounds as if the school board believes that there are additional factors that should be taken into consideration. I have had a conversation, not just today, but recently and over some time with Chair Estabrooks about this, but I don't know if reopening the entire JUA is would that be an overreaction, or if we wanted to explore this to try to get the clarity, to heal this rift with the school board over a question of interpretation, does administration have a suggestion about what would be the right step to initiate? If we were to give subsequent, whatever the decision is today, if we were to give subsequent direction to open that conversation with the school board, do you have a perspective about, we heard the suggestion of a committee to do that. There have been various conversations over the years. I know there are ongoing administrative conversations. Mr. Corbould has familiarity with some of these questions from last week still, so just any thoughts, or would you want to take that question away? Because the direction could just be, if we wanted to look at this, could you give us some recommendations and come back later, or do you have any preliminary thoughts about how we might approach closing this rupture with the school board over this question?
So Mayor, I can respond and ask that others supplement where required. I think where I would start is, and Ms. Estabrook referenced this in her presentation as well. As a whole, city administration maintains a pretty strong relationship with the administration at ESV. We will be bringing back a report here at the beginning of February that talks about strategies on surplus school sites, and it will speak to an ongoing strategy and collaboration that we're having with administration within EPSV, and just different ideas for how we can unlock school sites that exist and some of the challenges that are faced. In terms of a more formal review of the JUA, the city and the different school boards have been parties to that agreement since I think it would have been in the 50s. It is regularly reviewed. The last time that it was up for review was, I believe, 2009. And my understanding is that there actually is working committees with all of the different organizations, creating a project charter to look at the different items that the parties have, that could be looked at from a development perspective. So that work is well underway. I'm not certain that we would need necessarily a motion from committee, but it is something that we are live to.
Well, and there are a bunch of moving pieces. There are the surplus sites that have been built on that have some value and a liability of a building. There are the sites that have already been declared surplus, which they're concerned about this as a precedent with, and then there are the sites yet to be surplused, of which there are still many. And so that's a lot of public assets in limbo. And I wouldn't want this question, or I understand the school board's concern. They have some notional control over some of these sites that haven't been declared, and they still have an inventory of sites that they haven't surplused that have been developed on. And if the question of them all becoming private schools from a competition standpoint is a real question to them, then I think we've got to settle that to the satisfaction of both parties to be able to mobilize the lands for highest and best use, which is probably housing in an awful lot of cases. So given our focus on that, I want to break through that and find the right accommodation with all of the public school boards who are in possession of these lands and have expectations about first right of refusal they have rights under law for that. And then beyond that, separate from where this issue, where we're well down a path, I think if those conversations are happening, maybe no subsequent direction is required at this time other than perhaps checking back in on it. Which I can do offline. So those answers to the questions are really helpful, Mr. Hodgson. Did you have a thought, Mr. Corbould?
Yeah, I think, Mayor, just wanted to clarify to the legal question that was asked earlier. I mean, I think what wasn't said was whether this transaction is in conformity with the joint use agreement or not today, and the fact is it is. So I just want to make that clear.
Crystal, thank you. All right, any other questions on this one? Not seeing any. So the recommendation is before us. Is anyone prepared to put that on the floor?
I'll put it on the floor, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Walters. So the recommendation to enter into agreement to sale for on a market basis as laid out in the report is before us here today. So speaking to it, go ahead, Councillor Walters.
Yeah, so just I'll be brief. You know, I really do appreciate immensely the submission today by Chair Estabrooks. You know, I think that this is in many ways a question of values, and sometimes values do need to be spelled out a little bit more clearly in these agreements. So I'll, you know, take our administration at their word that this is something that we need to spend some time clarifying. But, you know, we've talked about this particular site for a number of years now, and I think as City Manager Corbo just reminded us, you know, in terms of executing our duty today, that this recommendation is legally in bounds with the JUA as we know it today. So, you know, I don't support this with great enthusiasm, knowing that we do need to clarify how all partners want to use these sites when they are surplused. But I think we can I can comfortably move on and support the recommendation before us. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor McKean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I won't go on and on. I thought Councillor Walters stated things pretty clearly. This to me is a clash of complex clash of values, some of which are occurring in my head right now as I speak. I want to thank Chair Estabrook in particular for her submissions. And I think it's really important that we do, as Councillor Walters said, clarify this situation in the joint use agreement, and because we don't want to have this happening over and over again. But I don't feel that I have a comfortable position to stand on to oppose this. As Mr. Coble just said, this is a legal transaction under the joint use agreement. So unless somebody says something extremely compelling, I feel that with some reluctance as well, I will be supporting this.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
I just wanted to say I've been listening to the arguments presented, and thank you to both Ms. Estabrooks and Mr. Sidhu for coming out today and talking about this issue from your particular perspectives. In the end, I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Walters that, as we've heard from our administration, this is within the bounds of the joint use agreement, and as we have heard many times, I think in other contexts, when lands are designated for school uses, neighborhoods do appreciate when they do go to school uses. We've heard that in many other contexts. So I find it very hard to disagree with administration's recommendation, and therefore I will be supporting it.
Thank you. I'll chime in. I think all astute comments, and Councillor Hamilton described it as within the bounds of the JUA, and I agree with that interpretation from city administration and from members of council here. And I think Ms. Estabrooks, not to put words in her mouth at all, understands and agrees too that it is within the bounds of the JUA and the school board. But I appreciate her coming and the many conversations that we've had, because very clearly they do not want it to be within the bounds of the JUA. That and it may not be one school. I think it very much, especially one that, as we've discussed, is already in existence in a facility that is aging out and not in the right location from transportation efficiency or 15-minute neighborhood, 15-minute district kind of city plan concept. So for infrastructure reasons and for transportation reasons and for sound planning reasons, and given that all of the other planning would say a school makes sense on this site, historically and recently through the land use hearings on this, and the three public boards having all passed on it, we're now at the point where, after a competitive process, the winning submission in a competitive process happens to be a private school, but again, one that exists elsewhere, and this will solve a number of other issues that are presented. So that can be interpreted by members of the school board and members of the public as throwing the doors wide open to private education and charter schools. And so I completely understand where the school board is coming from with that interpretation. And I do think if that risk felt by the school board then becomes a risk to our ability to work together on the overall portfolio of public lands to primarily orient them for public use, recognizing there may be some exceptions where private use makes sense, and this might be one of those exceptions, and I'm going to support the proposal that's before us today on the basis of some of those exceptions. But I do think we need to come to an accord with both the Catholic Board and the Public Board particularly about their portfolios of public lands that are tied up because of some divergence of clarity over what should happen with these lands. And I happen to think that housing would be the preferred use for an awful lot of these sites, and that the city plan would point us in that direction. And that may bring some comfort to the school board if we can get to clarity on that. I also think that early learning and care is a huge need in the community as well. And that is probably a use that the boards would find complementary as well. And so I think we do need to dive into that in the context of the broader real estate portfolio question. I think the city may be in a position to help support the management of the assets and the liabilities of the closed schools in a more integrated way. But we need trust to do that. And I hope that this very specific decision on the merits does not become a trust barrier to finding that shared understanding and unlocking the potential for these lands to solve a variety of challenges for public education, for early childhood learning and development, for housing, and for community amenity value, all in ways that respect the public interest nature of the land. And on any residual parcels where those uses don't make sense or can't, the merits can't be illustrated, then there still has to be a process to surplus that land on a market basis where the taxpayer and the public is made whole, which is the case in this case. And so that's why I'm able to support this as a very much on the merits on a one-off, and very much want to maintain and enhance the discussion with our school board partners about how we can collaborate on the community lands portfolio that we share some stewardship over. So I'll leave it there, see if there's anybody else wishing to speak. Did you want to close, Councillor Walters?
No, that's fine.
All right, please vote.
We're just missing Councillor Hamilton's vote.
It didn't come up. I'm a yes.
Display the vote, please. Carried. Okay, let's shift gears to item 6.5, the 2021 private construction projects economic incentive options.
Thank you. The report in front of you, the report in front of you is administration's best effort to create a program within a short time frame that can provide support to the construction industry for the 2021 season while benefiting the city's long-term goals and job creation. Shortly after committee's motion in October, administration met with industry to talk about what type of projects could be considered high impact and what sort of incentive from the city may be effective. The consultation emphasized the point that there are many factors that go into an investment decision, many of which are outside the municipal government's control. What was made clear was that a single-year tax incentive would not be effective alone. Certainty of relief was also important, which meant exploring consideration of a grant as opposed to a rebate or tax incentive. So if council wished to provide tax relief, the proposed approach is likely the simplest and quickest to administer. As such, the proposed program would not include a pro forma requirement, but would require certification that the initiatives support development in 2021 as intended. And should the intended outcome of the development not be reached, such as the construction does not match the original proposed value or the number of units, we could build in expectations of recovery. The estimated maximum cost of the program is $22.9 million. We know this program is being contemplated in the context of COVID, and therefore the recommended source of funds is the appropriated FSR, the one we pulled together for COVID relief. This would draw the funds to $6 million that's remaining for allocation for other COVID-related costs. If we do not get all eligible construction projects applying, though, we could foreseeably reduce the forecasted draw on the program, and the funded difference would then remain in that appropriated FSR. I will now ask Ms. McCabe to outline the city's interpretation of high impact and the proposed program criteria.
Thanks, Mary. As the city's financial capacity and legislative ability to incent development are limited, we looked at where and what projects would benefit from Edmonton's policy goals the most. What we heard from developers is that some form of longer-term tax relief allows them the stability to make investment decisions. This is how we arrived at the 4-year time frame outlined in the report. Also, based on existing permits, administration identified projects with a construction value of at least $10 million and which had at least 50 new residential units. This represents a significant investment in Edmonton and provides more housing options and increases density. The suggested focus on the city center node, which includes neighborhoods east, north, and west of downtown, upholds the city's plan's intended outcomes to preserve and strengthen the role of the city center as Edmonton's principal and employment and residential node. City center projects are considered to be of the highest impact given the diversity and density in the area. These projects would support downtown vibrancy and help in the recovery from the unique impacts of COVID-19 in that area. Should council decide to proceed with an incentive program of this nature, we believe that this proposed program balances the city's city building aspirations and fiscal constraints with the economic reality of Edmonton at large. And we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. That's really helpful. Well, we have had one more individual register to speak on this one, which is Henry Edgar. If we could just get a motion to add him to the speakers list.
I'll move that we add Henry to the speakers list.
Thank you, Councillor Walters.
Second.
I'll just seek unanimous consent. Any concerns with adding Mr. Edgar? Not seeing any. We'll now have 3 speakers on this one, Mr. Mustashari, Mr. Horvath, and then Mr. Edgar. Are they all online?
I believe so.
Okay. Mr. Mustashari?
I believe he's joined by phone and may need to hit *6 on his keypad to unmute.
Hello.
There we are. Go ahead.
Hi, it's Reza.
Yes, go ahead.
What would you like me to say?
Well, you're.
I'm sorry, I just joined. Yes.
No, we're just coming
just
to the
heard my
speakers. We're just coming to the speakers now, and you're up first, and then there are 2 other speakers, and then there may be some questions. So you have 5 minutes if you have some thoughts now, Reza.
Yes, as we've mentioned, we discussed it before as well with you, and I spoke with administration, some of the other councillors as well. So we all know that this is probably the most difficult time to contemplate a large development. And, initially Falcon was contemplated as a condominium, but that market is so weak right now that after talking to my bank, RBC, we decided to do it as a rental. And when we were doing the analysis, we did some reports, and the absorption rates in the rentals rates that can be charged are fairly low. So it would make the pro forma almost unworkable if you had to build the building and then carry it for a few years to fill it up, and meanwhile pay the increased property taxes for a fully finished building that's vacant. That would really exacerbate the situation, because normally we could, let's say, rent 20 to 30 units a month in normal times, but right now it's under 10. So Falcon 1 as a rental would have 240 units, so it would take, I think, over 2 years to fill it up. So I thought a solution that wouldn't really necessarily cost the city would be like, we just would be exempt from any tax increases because of the development. So for about, in the program they're proposing 4, but I'm thinking 5, because it'll take me 3 years to build the building and then another 2 years to fill it up. So that'll give me some breathing space for operating costs to fill up the building with renters, and then we can go back to the increased taxes that the development would bring. And I thought it's a win-win because it doesn't really cost the city. And, in the normal times, like, if I don't build the building, well, you guys will not ever see the tax increase. Well, maybe, I don't know, a few years from now when things get better. But the problem with that is if we don't start doing something in downtown, we're going to lose a lot of these contractors, and a lot of the momentum will be lost, and it will be difficult to regain even after there is an economic recovery, which I think inevitably there will be. And I think it's better for the city to have the capacity to take advantage of a better economic climate when it occurs. So I think this allows some construction to go on. Doesn't necessarily cost the city anything. Well, I mean, some potential revenue that would be deferred, increased revenue, and it would help my numbers with my bank for them to get them on board to finance this thing. I think those are the main points.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mostashari. And next up is Mr. Horvath. Maybe we can mute Mr. Mostashari unless there are any questions.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Hi, Mayor, councillors, committee. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. Some of my comments echo Mr. Mostashari's comments. These are unprecedented, difficult times. The economic conditions have been compared to those of World War II. And we, as a lot of people, as developers, really struggled to make the numbers work. Comparing property taxes in Edmonton, property taxes, and I'll compare it to a city like Vancouver. The real estate market is very robust in Vancouver. The property tax rates in Edmonton are over double what they are in Vancouver. And that makes it very challenging to make numbers work. Construction costs are higher in Vancouver, land costs are higher in Vancouver, which makes the Edmonton market more desirable. But the property taxes, I think, are the single biggest obstacle in from a pro forma perspective. As the previous speaker stated, during construction, the project is valued, increases in value, but there's, property taxes are stepped. But after a 2-year construction or 3-year construction, you need to lease up the project. And there's a year where you're actually not earning any money, and then you're paying these significant property taxes. And I think this program is very forward-looking. I think it's got a lot of opportunity to add tax base earlier than normally would appear, because it will incentivize developers, it'll make numbers work. And particularly on the back end of the project, where you have a lease-up period where you're leasing up 6, 8, 10 units a month, but you're paying full property taxes for several years. And it could take you, a year and a half, 2 years, depending on the size of your project, to lease up. So this is, I think, a very important program. It's, I think our project, same as many other projects, are sitting on the sidelines trying to make numbers work, trying to make things work. We've all got projects that we want to start, but it's a very difficult financial market. There's a lot of uncertainty, and this piece of, I think the current proposal is 4 years of frozen property taxes. I really think this will incentivize people to start earlier than they would have. And for some people, I think it will be the difference between a go and a no-go, or looking at different markets. And so I think there's a lot of benefits here. I think there's benefits to the developer, but I think there's going to be a lot of financial benefits to the city in getting that tax base in sooner. And I just think it's a very forward-looking program, and I really hope council supports it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Edgar is next.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thanks for your time today, and for allowing me to come in last minute here. I'd like to just begin by applauding you, as my colleagues have, on this initiative. I think it's a critical step in the right direction to achieving the goal of getting a number of projects going this year. And I'd also like to recognize administration on their approach and collaboration with the private sector to find a suitable solution in what we all know are very trying times. So, this is a step in the right direction, and it's a meaningful attempt to incentivize this, but it really doesn't solve the larger issue that we face as an industry as it relates to high-density residential and mixed-use projects. We're in an environment where rents are compressing and costs are increasing. And if you bear with me, I'll give an example of two of our projects here in Edmonton that I think you're all familiar with, the Hendricks and the McLaren, because I think it gives a really clear illustration of the issue. When we finished the Hendricks, our property taxes were roughly $500,000 for the building, and it's a 260 unit building that's 198,000 square feet. And that was in 2017. When we finished the McLaren, which is a 240 unit building, that's 213,000 square feet, so effectively the same size building, our property taxes were nearly $900,000. So that differential represents about a $10 million swing in value for us as a developer, which encompasses a significant component of our profit on a deal of that size. And I appreciate for the city that we see valuations of rental buildings increasing, and therefore property taxes increase. But that increase has broken the pro forma for high-rise buildings in the city, and that's why you see a number of these approved development sites within the core not moving forward right now. So while I do think that this initiative should be supported, I absolutely think it should be supported, and it may move the needle for some developments. The larger scale developments, this doesn't actually do enough. So, what I would say today is that I do support this, and I certainly hope that council moves forward with it. But I would suggest a longer relief period and further consultation with staff and administration to figure out a solution that will allow a number of these larger developments to move forward. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you to the three speakers on this item. Are there questions? Councillor Walters?
So I suppose, I'll ask Reza this, since you brought it up, maybe just provide a little more clarity on the benefit to you of the 4 to 5 years. So, you talk about 3 years to construct, 2 years to fill it up. 5 years makes more sense to you than 4. And I'll ask our administration about what that means for us to provide 5 instead of 4. But maybe just say a little bit more about that. Like, if it's 4, you're not, there's a stronger likelihood that you wouldn't build in today's environment.
Yes, hear me?
Yeah, we can hear
Hello?
you.
Okay. Yes, it just somehow mutes by itself. Anyways, yes, because typically for Falcon as a rental, it would take a minimum of 3 years to build from the time I started. And that's considering everything goes as planned, which sometimes it doesn't. So, and then based on the current estimate, which the bank is looking at, we're looking at a minimum of two years, but anywhere from 2 to 3 years to fill up the building. So that's why 5 or 6 years would make it definitely more effective for the numbers and everything. Yes. So yeah, 3 years to build minimum, and the minimum 2. So it would be nice to have another year for cushion because construction sometimes is delayed, and especially if you start during COVID, which is the plan. And I don't think this thing is going to subside until probably towards the end of this year. We can anticipate some delays in construction because of some requirements by the governments for, to avoid COVID in a construction site. And then, people potentially getting sick, or if there's a scare that people have to not come to work. So because of those things, I think the construction will actually take longer. And I mean, who knows after the post-COVID world what the landscape is going to look like. But my analysis with the bank is predicated on today's market. And we're looking at a minimum of 3 years, but anywhere from 2 to 3 years to fill up the building. So to get them on board, I think 5 minimum, preferably 6, would be more helpful.
Okay, thanks.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. So, Mr. Edgar, what you said is breaking your pro forma. Maybe just spell that out again for me. I didn't quite understand.
Yeah, I mean, it's simply just incoming cost and profitability. So when I say it's breaking the pro forma, using that Hendricks and McLaren as an example again, we were underway on our second building, basing our assumptions on the best knowledge we had to date, which is what we were assessed and paid on a building like the Hendricks. So when you increase that cost and which decreases your net operating income so significantly, once you've already begun construction, there's no turning back at that point.
Right.
So you end up in a bit of a situation when you complete your building, obviously.
Right, and rents are compressing, which is the other big factor.
And rents are compressing, that's exactly right. So now look, a lot of these are macro elements that are out of all of our control. But the property tax one, when I say breaks the pro formas, if I look at any of our sites that we'd earmarked for high-rise developments, concrete high-rise developments, they just don't work anymore with the property taxes where they are. I mean, that, we talk in big numbers, but that's because we're using big numbers. So $10 million of profitability off of the bottom line, I mean, that means you're not going to go anymore. So
then maybe
again, no, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say a little bit more, because you talked about, minimally what's in front of us today, whether we extend it or not, we'll discuss. But the consultation that you yearn for beyond what's proposed today, where do you hope to go with our administration in terms of further ideas and proposals?
You know what? The long story is I don't have an answer right now, and I think it's gonna require us all being in a room together and looking at priorities and looking at what levers we can pull as a group. I have always appreciated the way that this administration has approached issues like this, or like the community amenity contribution, where they do consult with the private sector. So I think there's a good group of people, and that if we can all sit together and really talk about this, I'm hoping we can come up with a solution. But I mean, long story short, we've got to find a way to reduce the mill rate, change the way that we're looking at apartment buildings as an asset class, and how they're taxed.
I got it. Okay, I'm out of time. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor McKean.
Yeah, thanks. And Henry, the difference between the Hendricks and the McLaren was probably a fairly hot market in the greater downtown, and therefore the building is assessed as having a certain market value. And the idea to property taxes, and we have to assess them on a market value, I suppose, is that some of that value might come down over time if the market deflates as it has. Do you have any indication that the property taxes you'll be paying on the Hendricks or the McLaren would come down right now?
I can certainly tell you the values come down. So I would hope that correspondingly the taxes would come down, but that would be a question probably to administration rather than myself, in terms of how it would be assessed.
Yeah, and it's, and I hear you, and I think, and I don't know what authorities we'd have around tax policy to reward density. It's always been a bit of an issue for me that our tax policy doesn't necessarily do that. Reward the efficiency we get in our own operations from that. So, but Henry, and I respect the other two speakers of what they've said. Would this program, whether it was 4 years or 5 years, would it affect the decision that you might make to go ahead with the tower proposal you have approval for near the new downtown park?
No, it wouldn't on that current form. On that project, we may be coming back to you with a lesser building, a smaller building.
But all things being equal, and maybe it's an unfair question because you've come up perhaps with some other issues, but do you think this will be enough to see some of those? Man, we've approved a lot of towers over the last 2 terms. This program, 4 or 5 years, might see some of them start, because the whole idea here is to get people working, to get projects going and get contractors and Edmontonians working. Is it your submission that this still isn't enough?
Yeah, it is not enough, but it is meaningful. So if the decision is you can't do this, is let's at least do this, but let's look to do more, is what I'm getting at. Anything's going to help, and this does represent a meaningful amount of money, but it if I might just give the example one more time of just rental building, when a building's finished and it's empty, it's not actually worth anything, but we're still paying full property tax value.
Which is that's a really interesting conundrum that I wondered if our tax assessment system actually recognized. So if it's not a going concern, how can the building itself have the same value? But and maybe it does diminish over time, but I suspect it wouldn't happen fast enough to make a difference for you. Am I right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I wanted to thank all the speakers. I had the chance to talk to Reza the other day, so I appreciate his perspective. And Rob, nice to hear from you too. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for the speakers? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you all for your thoughtful comments here today. We'll shift now to questions of administration on this one. Councillor Walters, you'd selected this initially.
So maybe say a little bit about the impact of a 5-year versus a 4-year approach.
So, Councillor, financially, the impact of a 5-year is another $7.6 million on that. If we did choose to offer it to all, we could put a max on the project. If not, all apply and look at some elongation.
So this is a receipt for information report, right? So this suggests you're prepared to go ahead with the 4-year under...
That's correct.
Okay. So you would need... So the extras are $7 million per year, or total cost?
That's correct, and I don't have a funding source for that $7 million necessarily, so, because that does exceed what we have in that funding source.
Right.
That said, Ms. McCabe and I could look at making it a 5-year program, but it'd be a kind of like more of a first come, first serve then.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll listen to, I think it's worth thinking about for sure, and I think there's good rationale based on the speaker's input, based on their you know, what they're going to go through and their timelines. It seems very rational to me. But I'll hear from others on committee. First, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor McKean.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So we heard that this, from our speakers today, that this might not be enough in at least one case, but you did some consultation and you feel somewhat comfortable, Ms. Pearson or Ms. McCabe, that this will spark some construction of these projects in 2021?
Councillor McKean, yes, we did do some engagement through this process. We did a workshop with a number of industry members as well as a number of one-on-one meetings, and we do believe that this will help in 2021, in particular in the downtown core.
Okay, and tell me, please, and it might have been in the report, or I apologize, but what does begin in 2021 mean? Could that be engaging planners and architects and others, or does it mean you're starting to dig a hole?
The intention was that you're actually starting to dig a hole in 2021, that you've got it improved. In order to be into this program, you'd have to have an approved development permit or have made an application for a development permit. So really the idea is 2021 is going to continue to be a challenge economically for Edmonton, and we want to get more people to live in the city center node. So the idea was to have people who were going to construct in 2021 to be able to keep jobs and keep the talent to do this type of projects in Edmonton through 2021.
Right. I had a side note to Councillor Walters. You're a little hard to hear, but I wanted to follow up with his question, I think, about what you need from this committee today, or do you need anything from committee today? First of all, there's this program that you are suggesting, recommending, which we may or may not have some interest in extending to a 5-year. But the other thing that interests me, and this is, I know, a bit of a complexity, but tax policy, and whether or not there is anything that could be reviewed or done around rewarding density.
So 2 points on that, Councillor. For your first, we would need the motion. It is for information, but we do have in the report on page 5 a motion that could bring it forward as we've developed it. For second, I'm actually going to defer that to Mr. Szabo.
Hi, Councillor. So yeah, just as a quick heads up on that front, we do have a report going forward in early March to talk about subclasses and use and density encouragement. So we can have that conversation at that time.
So we will. Okay, yeah, that's interesting because I think, so, well, I have you here, Mr. Szabo. let's say there's a building out there right now and it's fairly new, but it's only 50% occupied. How do we assess that versus it's 100% occupied and everybody's paying sort of full pre-COVID rent rates? Are we able to assess that?
So I'll just say two things, and then I might just defer to my boss to speak any more to the assessment side of things. One, obviously, if you were the purchaser of a property like that and it was completely vacant but completely built, it probably still has value, right? Because you would still be willing to buy a building like that and see the potential for 20 years. But secondly, just to be aware that we do look at a mass appraisal basis, right? So we're considering the property based on other properties within its class. And so it might not be filled as of year one, but properties like it, what are they going for? And that's what we'd be looking at in terms of how we assess that property. When we look at vacancies, we'd be therefore looking at the vacancies of that kind of property and what it generally sees as a vacancy rather than its specific individual vacancy at that point in time. Because you're looking at a much larger time horizon of 20 years to talk about what that property is actually worth.
So we can't be nimble enough in our assessment to say that particular building does not have that high a value because it's only half full at the moment.
So I would kind of say, does it actually have half of that value because it's half full, right?
Right.
You have to.
Right. And I don't want to offer people opportunities or arguments for appeal, but I just wondered about whether or not our system is sophisticated enough or nuanced enough to recognize that in the market.
Yeah, so I mean, we would have provisions to look at vacancies, but typically we're doing it on a mass appraisal basis, right? So we still have to look at what the property is in comparison to other properties like it. If you start going at single properties and saying, well, this property is more vacant than others just in itself and offering discounts, you're breaking away from the system of how we assess property.
Thank you.
So I don't know if you've got like how worthwhile it is to go into the specific example, but the McLaren's got a fair bit of commercial in the podium, and the Hendricks doesn't. That the presence of additional commercial at the higher mill rate would account for some significant portion of the differential, I would think. Fair to say?
Go to Mr. Zabo on that, or Ms. Watt is on as well.
Hello, Council. It's Kate Watt on the line. That is correct, Mr. Mayor. Non-residential would influence both the assessment and also the tax rate that is applied. What we call these types of properties mixed-use buildings. Thank you.
Yeah. And that was tough before this situation, and now in this environment that's even tougher. So I hear where Mr. Edgar's coming from. I think there's a couple of different factors there, and I think his point that understanding what all those factors are that push or pull on go no go decision is a fair one. I think merits some further look. The other issue underlying here, and I think it's been touched on, is the 15-point differential on other residential, that we're pushing against that on all of these projects, provided they're rental project, on the assumption that they're rental projects, purpose-built rental projects. Yes.
Yes, that's correct. Rental properties do have a 15% point premium because we recognize them as similar to commercial properties in that they are revenue generating, where condominiums we count as individual units of single family residence, if that makes sense.
Even though many of those may be rented out, but we don't know that. We're not in a position to discriminate, as it were, one way or the other, but you can make that assumption, and also that the property tax expenditure is a pre-tax expenditure in the pro forma and in the books of the developer. But I think that then bumps into this other question that's coming back soon on incentives and disincentives, because I think some of the rationale really starts to break down if it's actually, when you're now talking about a tall building and all the benefits that come to street life and the city plan, drivers, and so on and so forth, that if we're going to target incentives, short-term and long-term, one way to get the 5th year or 5th through 10th year for these kinds of projects to go, both downtown and in the TOD context, would be to look at another class for these where we phase out the differential as the incentive phases out. So rather than trying to park more cash now, which I have some questions about separately, is there something else we could do in terms of the efficiency and tax reform mill rate differential question to account for the issues people are facing in the medium term and the valuations going out beyond year 5. Now, truing all of that up in time to support people's investment decisions for this construction year might be tough to do, but we've had 2 folks suggest we should send this back and take a little bit more look at it, and I'm wondering whether it's possible in a short period of time to bring a couple of those conversations together to try to get to investability. Or if we lose the construction season if we do that.
We were just thinking we'd have to do it for the council meeting with respect to this, that we could do it for that.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think even if I think this should go to council anyway for discussion next week. So if there's room for a bit more of that industry engagement. And then I guess one other question, some other questions I would flag for that discussion are there other things we might need the 22 million for? Are there other things, if we were going to spend 22 million on incentives to jumpstart some construction activity and development to advance civic goals, including but not limited to the civic plan, would this be at the top of our list? Well, maybe I'll ask those 2 and then and you can react to those first, and then I've got some more functional questions.
Mr. Mayor, as we work through the city plan implementation, at this point, it's hard to say that we have a list of here's the top goal that we would achieve with $22 million. With that being said, this incentive program does provide that immediate economic benefit for those who are going to do construction this year. In addition, it helps us with our long-term goals around getting more people to live downtown and downtown vibrancy, which we know has been a real challenge through COVID-19 and is going to continue to be a challenge in the short term. So with 2 of those being said, we have brought this forward with the recommendation that it will advance our city plan goals. Can I say it's the top priority? We don't have that full analysis at this point, but it would be pretty close to the top, knowing kind of where we are in the economic conditions that we are in Edmonton right now.
I really want to ask a follow-up, but I'm out of time. But you can, I'll come back on a second round, but that was a very helpful answer, and I appreciate all the work on the turnaround on this to even get to this conversation today. So, Councillor Knack.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question is maybe just making sure I fully understand it, and I want to make sure I'm correct in this. The reason why we have to have this funding source piece is that because these are things that might not happen if this didn't exist. But the minute they begin under the assessment formula we have to use, you have to assign the value, therefore you have to charge property taxes, therefore if you're offsetting it, you have to have a funding source. Is that a correct sequence of events?
I will start and then defer to Ms. Watt, but yes, it's also because this is a grant program. When we looked at the tax incentives and rebate programs, this didn't quite fit, and we do have some options there, but this is our recommended approach. Ms. Watt?
Yes, Councillor, it is legislation that requires us to assess the property as of a certain date, as of a certain condition of the type of property. So all else equal, we would be assessing the property according to our best estimate of market value.
Great, thank you. I just want to make sure I understood that correctly. So then the follow-up, and recognizing there will be some conversation come March on one report, but I am curious if because there is this requirement to do that, is there an opportunity in a relatively quick fashion? Would this be something that the province might be willing to look at, whether it's through an amendment of a Bill 7 or something else that says, listen, we've got properties that we want to recognize could move forward, and instead of us having to then offset the funding through grants, if the argument is being made that these wouldn't exist in the first place, therefore it's not something that's actually built into our budget, do we think they might be open to that? So they do seem to want to move forward with economic development. Is this something that, while we work on the other piece, not to do it independent of that, but could we do this and see if they'd be willing to make that change?
I believe, Councillor, that they would argue that they have already given us sufficient tools to be able to accomplish that. We, for our own administrative purposes, looked at a grant because it's a question of whether you do it on the for or on the after. If you do it through a grant program, we have a lot more ability to dedicate funds to it, so to speak, and therefore control it more tightly. We could still look at tax policy. One thing I would caution is that our assessments will be going out on February the 12th, which means that tax classes will need to be set very, very, very soon in order to actually establish different tax policy classes.
Yeah, I think my question probably relates more towards the next year and beyond type of conversation, but I just wanted to understand that because, again, it feels like it does feel a bit odd that we have to fund this for something that, if it didn't exist, if these buildings weren't going to be built next year or this year, that we're funding something that money was never planned to come into our budget in the first place. So it feels like there's a gap that needs to be addressed. And again, I appreciate maybe that's all part of our conversation in March. Is that fair? We could look at all that, including any conversation with the province about adjusting their tools for future years.
We certainly could. I understand Mr. Szabo has an additional comment on that.
So, Councillor, just kind of to jump in there, I think it's really just a question of the kind of program that we're using. If we decide to go through a tax cancellation, tax rebate, you wouldn't necessarily have to have a grant or budget line item for it. Because the grant program, you just need to have an identified funding source. So everything you say is absolutely true. It might end up being the case that if this construction did not occur anyway, that it'll offset itself. But just as kind of part of the course, when you develop a grant program, you need to have a funding source. So we put that there. And on the other side, on the revenue side, you're absolutely right. If it was planned, it moves the dial to make it happen where it otherwise would not have taken place, we will have additional growth revenue come next year. And if it would have constructed anyway, then we wouldn't. So just a matter of making sure we have a clear place to pull the money from on one side. And if the revenue comes in here, great, it will offset.
Do we have a way that I mean, in terms of your process, how we assume what would have happened anyway? Is it the fact that a development permit's been approved and handed it to us, or how are we making that judgment call, I guess?
This is the hardest question of any kind of incentive program, is how can you guarantee that the incentive program is actually making the difference between a go and a no-go? We asked that question to the development community as well. It's a challenge for them to make that argument one way or the other, right? It's just for them, their performance will be also somewhat based on other jurisdictions and where they're looking to do investments there as well. So what we might see, it's in their interest to build in Edmonton, they might have an even more profitable project somewhere else in the country. So it's difficult for us to tell you with any certainty, here are the programs that would have gone regardless. Here are the ones that would not. As part of this program, we're suggesting that the developers would include some kind of commitment to say, yes, this has made the difference. But it's ultimately just part of the application process. So it's not guaranteeing one thing or the other.
Excellent. I'm out of time. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, I'm really curious for the bits that would be within the downtown and would fit therefore within the CRL, how that muddies the water on this. I don't really think it, I mean, it sort of feels a little bit like double dipping, but in actual fact, if the money doesn't exist, the money doesn't exist. If we did it as a grant, ironically, we'd probably carve it back into the CRL. And also, if it's within the CRL, then we would be getting the education tax portion to pay back. So I'm curious to know how that all fits into this.
We did consider that, and I'm going to let Mr. Ashmore talk to that.
So Councillor, just to be clear, all uplift in the CRL must be used for the purposes of the CRL plan itself. So you can't reallocate the uplift from a CRL into a grant program like this. So for any portions of the, if a property was in a CRL that qualified for the grant, the uplift from that property would remain in the CRL. The grant money must come from someplace else.
Yeah, what the irony though would be that if we are reimbursing the tax portion uplift with the grant, then that uplift is going to go into the CRL. So the grant will redirect itself into the CRL, will it not?
No, it won't. The grant goes to the property owner. So the
no, but if the grant goes to the property owner for taxes that they would have paid, which would have been uplifted, that go into the CRL, effectively it ends up there.
Yeah, you're right, Councillor. Effectively it does, but don't forget, you're pulling the funding source from someplace else.
Oh, no, I realize it doesn't deal with, I get that bit of the puzzle. I understand it doesn't replace the grant. I'm not suggesting that. But it adds interesting complexity. If we did it if we did it though as tax forgiveness, it would not trigger that. It wouldn't go to the CRL.
Technically, tax forgiveness, you're not pulling it out of the CRL either. So it remains in the CRL for the purposes of the CRL grant. You might have a little bit more wiggle room with tax forgiveness than you would with a grant such as this, depending on the circumstances. But if you did a tax forgiveness program that mirrored this grant program, you should not be impacting CRL revenues for that tax forgiveness.
So where would that CRL money come from then? I mean, if we were forgiving the taxes, we'd have to, that money would have to flow into the CRL somehow.
You're not, so when you're forgiving it, that's kind of what I'm trying to get to, Councillor, is that the money already exists before you forgive it. It's already been allocated for use in the CRL. So if you end up forgiving it, you're really not, you shouldn't be forgiving it out of the CRL uses. So you've allocated the money for use in specific projects in the CRL. You should not be pulling that money back out of the CRL and forgiving that money technically.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to spend a lot of time fussing about this. I just was wondering, you know, what the implications are to us on the CRL and our projections there, I think were the essence of my question. But also recognition that the CRL would still benefit from the education tax portion. So there would be a double benefit to us that way, correct?
Well, to be clear, Councillor, there is no, on the uplift, there is no education tax within the CRL. All you're doing is you're modifying your CRL levy to capture what would have been an education tax. So it's a little bit different than saying that you're benefiting the education tax or something like that. There is no education tax on the uplift in the CRL.
No, but if these buildings went up, we would still get the education tax portion in the CRL. If the buildings, if the uplift happens.
Well, what you're getting is you're getting a CRL levy that is a typical property tax plus what would have been the education tax.
Yeah, gotcha.
If you want to do that, you're getting the education tax. Fair enough.
One other quick question. Did we not either in the renewed MGA or in the city charter? I know one of the things we were asking for was the ability to do multi-year tax forgiveness, so that we could go. That was one, because this came up around the brownfield issue. Did we get that? Can we actually do a multi-year commitment, or would you have to renew it every year?
You'd be renewing it every year, Councillor. You didn't get anything other than...
We didn't get that. Okay, I thought we had, but I know it was one of our asks. Okay, I'm out of time. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Walters.
I'm just trying to understand a bit of the decision-making process here. This is an information report. There's a motion, there's a possible motion in the report, so no action would be taken on this in any way unless we pulled that motion out and put it on the table today. So there's no the four-year grant program is what you're suggesting if we want to action it through that policy.
That is correct.
Okay, so just something you said earlier to something so if we were to do that, then we could suggest, and I'm think the mayor is going to follow up on this, but I was interested in that question as well. As you know, the administration returned to City Council with detailed grant programs, which could deal with 4 years that's proposed, and then additionally a 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th year strategy. Like the mayor, I think the mayor was getting at. Like you could do that in a week.
Well, we could do the 5-year for sure in a week because the analysis is already done. It's just a matter of whether we'd come back with a recommendation around potentially putting a ceiling on it.
Okay.
And do something that's more first come, first serve within the ceiling. I think we'd want to do a bit of engagement, a few phone calls with industry before we'd recommend that.
So what could come back in a week is the idea of a 5-year program. So we would have those two choices and the pros and cons against some prioritization, as you and the mayor discussed earlier. But
well, then the tax policy questions can come back with the other tax policy questions as a sweetener either to downtown specific or across the the other res space generally. Nodes and corridors, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I think that's a good approach then for council next week.
So thank you. You're really good questions on this, and thank you for turning this around quickly. Ms. McCabe, I really appreciated your answer to why this is, at first blush aligns with the city plan and aligns with some of the urgency around downtown and keeping the momentum of downtown. I think rumors of downtown's demise are greatly exaggerated. However, if this is an antidote to the spread of those rumors, by the injection of confidence, investment, jobs, eyes on the street, and ultimately more residents for baseload demand to support mom and pop retail, which is part of the life of downtown, then all that makes sense to me. Those are better arguments than I had for this to begin with. So thank you for that. The other, so you said, is it prioritized against all other things? No, and I respect you haven't had time to do that. But I'll ask the question a little bit differently. Is there something else in the wings that would achieve some of those outcomes that you are thinking about? Or is this sort of the best we got at the moment, recognizing these are imperfect times, we haven't done all that analysis?
This is the best option we have at this moment.
Okay, and then back to Ms. Pearson, understanding that, I would have assumed that must be the case, otherwise it wouldn't have got here with you having a level of comfort as our CFO to use some of the COVID reserve on this. But I have to ask, and this question will probably come up at council too, but are there other risks, contingencies, or issues or opportunities that are out there that we may need those dollars for? PPE costs if we don't get operating support in 21, transit shortfall in 21, other things like that, as I recall from our one-time adjustments, were the things that were potentially going to come from this. What's your level of comfort with betting this on having an extra, $6 or $7 million worth of property tax revenue ongoing 4 or 5 years out?
So I am comfortable. I did work with Ms. McCabe on this. It does leave not a lot of wiggle room in that FSR, but we have already accounted for the transit revenue loss. We have accounted for the PPE. The outstanding piece, my argument would be, is around the vulnerable population and the shelter costs around that, but enough there in the buffer at this particular moment with no crystal ball to say that we could support this.
Well, and the feds have topped up on the vulnerable people dollars 3 times. The last conversation I had with them is that we can expect more there. So with then a hope that some of those other risks have other mitigations and strategies and supports coming, we'd be able to do this, which creates jobs, attracts investment, gets that money into Edmonton rather than another market, helps us with recovery. Those are all the pros that are ROI to this then. So then the other question I had is, maybe I made an assumption that we would get to see pro formas, and I know the industry's always twitchy about that at the best of times, but these are far from the best of times, and the argument really was that the taxes make the difference on the pro formas. As part of the conversation between now and then, if we're going to work on this a little bit between now and next week, one thing I'd like you to take back would be, well, frankly, to press back on that so that we can really say to the taxpayer, this does make the difference. And 2, if there isn't a comfort, not to negotiate out loud, but whether it might be possible to engage a third party consultant or something who could look at the pro forma, and then it's double blind. They don't show us all the goods, but are able to say with some degree of professional satisfaction and objectivity that, yes, this really does make the difference, and so that when they certify, it's to the satisfaction of somebody who's validated that rather than just taking someone's word for it. Not to say that I don't believe for the testimony on the face that it's very, very hard times for the industry, but we all have to justify back to the taxpayer that we're not paying someone to do something they're going to do anyway, and just improving, what was maybe a bad performer or an okay performer into a good one, or a bad one into an okay one, but that it really does make the incremental difference between this project would not have gone otherwise.
We can certainly consider that, Mr. Mayor. We are also looking at how fast this has to occur, and so just making sure we have a decent administrative event. So we will consider that, though.
Part of the reason for bringing it forward as we have is that we want to make sure that the construction's happening in 2021, and the more due process that we add, it will slow the timelines associated with that. So we did look at that. We did have a robust conversation with industry about that. And we decided to proceed with the declaration idea, but we will continue to explore it between now and council.
Well, there's healthy tension there between, not wanting to create red tape or delay for this, but being able to justify the expenditure. So I appreciate that tension, and I'll leave the question there for now then. So do we want to make a modified recommendation to say, send this up to council, or refer back to admin to bring to council next week after some additional engagement with industry about a fifth year, a first come, first serve, which Councillor Carmel whisper in my ear creates a bit of a race among them too, which I think is not a bad thing if it's capped. So I think with some of those considerations in a referral, we don't have to enumerate all of them. I think the discussion's been really good. Or we can if it's the will of committee to enumerate them. So, but someone want to move referral?
I'll move it
as...
Councillor McKean?
I would be happy to move what you just described.
Yeah, force and effect is to give administration a little bit more time to iterate the proposal based on the discussion at committee and bring revised recommendations to council next week.
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McKean. We'll just let the clerks catch up with that wording. Do you need anything more, or is that sufficient? Do you want to get specific, or are you okay with, based on the discussion at committee? That's satisfactory for admin?
Administration's fine,
okay.
Yes.
Well, as long as that's satisfactory to committee, then it's good discussion, good work. Appreciate the perspectives from the industry folks. That's also helpful. Wording it would be that the report be referred to administration to further consider a 5-year timeline for the program and gather industry feedback based on the discussion at committee and provide revised recommendations returned to council next week. So satisfied with that, Councillor McKean?
I am.
Okay, did you want to speak to it?
I would. First of all, I wanted to thank again our speakers for coming out today. And Mr. Mayor, I wanted to thank you for your comments about downtown. I've had to talk about this a lot to a lot of people, including the media. I really believe we're going to have an amazing downtown. Things were stalled because of the pandemic, and I'm excited about the potential of this program to give downtown another kickstart. It is clearly, by all other accounts, not mine, the most important part of our city because it sends strong messages about our prosperity, about our values and our creativity. So I was really pleased to see that administration had made these recommendations and focused on the downtown core. I also am quite happy, Mr. Mayor, that you brought up the idea of a third party to do some further check on the pro forma, because I do think we need to maintain public confidence that we're investing money prudently. But I really wanted to thank administration for their work on this, and they don't have much time to work on it further before council, but I wish them Godspeed on that, and look forward to committee and council support on a program that I think, you know, I think some of us have been critical about not enough incentives from other orders of government outside of road projects, and housing being one of the things that we'd want to see more investment in. So this is another way to skin that cat, and I think it's really, really important that we partner with the private sector on this and send a signal that downtown is not only open for business, but it will be a going concern again in a short amount of time, providing we all get vaccinated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKean. Any other comments? No? Well, I think that sums it up nicely.
Hi, it's Reza. I just wanted to quickly say that the timing of this is very important.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mostashari. It's only comments from members of council right now, but I think you're.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. I think your point about the urgency it comes through. So so you'll get a follow-up call from administration on this, and that's why we're trying to bring it back to council next week for discussion. So.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
All right. Please vote on the recommendation, or pardon me, the referral to do a bit more work to bring it back to council next week.
We have 5 votes, Mr. Mayor.
Display the vote, please. Carried. All right. I don't know if we have time to get into any of the other items before the break here, but to the speakers for 6.9 and 7.1, please bear with us. Unfortunately, you will be preempted now by the time-specific items 7.2 and 8.1, which we do have 9 speakers on. So, or sorry, 10 now, I think. So, no, sorry, 9. So that's going to take us a little while in the afternoon, and then we'll resume in the order in which the items are on our agenda here. So we will try to get to everything today. If we don't, and it looks like we're not, we'll look at postponement options in the afternoon. So please tune in at 1:30 for the transmission update item, and then we'll resume the other items in order. Thanks, everyone.